Without it, too lack of a structure, no expectation, it wouldn't be abnormal for $1 million painting business to have $75,000 in receivables at any given time. And I don't know about you, but I don't really want to float $75,000 because I have a crappy process in place, or probably more likely a non-existent. Welcome back to the Elite Business Advice podcast. My name is Chris Moore, the founder of Elite Business Advisors, your host here for the podcast. There is one fundamental thing that I see almost all painting contractors stumble with. For some, it's a hard stumble. For others, maybe it's just a small stumble along the way. Are you ready for it? It's the Job Closeout SOP. Did you know that you should actually have a process to follow to close out a job? There's a lot of things that this impacts. We'll talk about that here at the end of the episode. But there's a proven process that we should have in how we wrap up jobs. This is how we make sure nothing gets missed. This is how we ensure everything gets paid on time. This is how we ensure that it minimizes the amount of callbacks and touch-ups we have to go back and do, okay? And so for a lot of people, it's a lack of having the documented process. But other times, it's the accountability that we talked about last week for the execution with it and the reinforcement of it. But either way, I know this is a tripping point for 95% of painting contractors out there. And you might be thinking that's a bold statement, but I truthfully believe in my heart, this is a tripping point that people are not following a very proven, predictable process every single time. So today in part 2 of our Production SOP series, I'm going to share what a job closeout SOP should look like, the things that it impacts in your business. I got 3 key ones teed up. And then who's accountable for each aspect of the execution of said SOP. So, fun fact, did you know that the closeout SOP actually starts on day 1 of the project? Most of you guys are just getting your Job Start SOPs dialed in, and maybe I could argue that step 1 of the closeout SOP should be the last step of the Start SOP. I'm not going to mess with your mind too much. So I hope it helps. Thanks for plugging in. This is the Elite Business Advice. Last week, we talked about the Job Start SOP and how we kick off projects well. Getting them off to the right start arguably is half the battle here. Okay. This week, we're going to dial in a little bit more on the end of the customer experience and the Job Closeout SOP. We kind of talked about that. Obviously, the middle part's the incredibly important part, but really truthfully, painting isn't rocket science, and the middle part should be the easy-ish part there. And so if that's a struggle, that's a different conversation. But I want to talk about the kind of the end of this experience here. We talked last week about how kicking it off properly builds into the experience, and I think it's important that up until this point, okay, let's say, you've done well with the sales process, you've shown professionalism, they like you a lot in your company, you've kicked off the project well, and your production team is crushing the project, okay? Everything is going great. Let's not drop the ball now. Okay, insert the visual here. Some of you guys have probably seen this. It happens at least twice a year on the SportsCenter's Not Top 10. And even if you don't watch SportsCenter, you've seen this on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. And it'll happen twice this college football season. I guarantee it. I will count it, and I will call them out as these episodes get recorded. Where somebody makes an interception. It's usually a defensive player, it seems like, too. Or it was some crazy offensive run or catch or something. But usually it seems like it's the defensive player, okay? Make an interception, run it all the way back for a touchdown where they think they did. And they go to celebrate, and for whatever reason, they drop the football when they're on the half a yard line as they're running into the end zone. The ball never crosses the plane. It's not a touchdown. And sometimes the other team ends up getting it back, okay? I promise you this will happen twice this year across all, 3 divisions of NCAA college football sports, and throw in the NFL. It may happen there too, okay? That's what you're doing if you fumble this last piece, okay? I want you to imagine you're in the Super Bowl, you intercept, Tom Brady. I know he's retired, just go with it. And you run it all the way back and you get to the 1 yard line and you just drop the football, whether it's because you're celebrating or you fumble it or whatever, and you just drop it. And that's how your claim to fame, right? So I don't know. I hope that hit home here, but don't fumble it. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. What I would say is if you are experiencing issues with collecting payment on time, with touch-ups and callbacks, with crews saying they're done and they actually aren't, you find out later on, right? Whether it's your sub crew or your in-house crew, it probably ties back into a lack of structure around wrapping up projects, okay? So let's build some structure there. What should that look like? What should this be like, okay? For starters, let's just talk through this closeout SOP, all right? First day of the project. So again, we talked last week on Job Start SOPs. Maybe I could argue this gets inserted in there at the very end, but either way, the first day of the project, we need to set the expectation that there's going to be a walkthrough at the end. We'll collect payment and we'll settle up on everything, make sure customer's happy, everything's just closed out, right? Hey, it's Monday. I know we're just getting kicked off. We haven't even put paint on your walls yet, but I just want to look ahead to Friday when we expect to finish, and just let you know that when we're done, we're going to do a walkthrough on the entire project with you. We'll settle up on payment. We'll take care of all that stuff. And, if everything goes smoothly this week, into the day Friday, we can all move on into the weekend, right? We don't have to make it weird. We don't have to say like, hey, we're going to expect you to write us a check for $19,570. Like, you have to make it weird. I always use the term settle up on payment, and use it if you like it. But I just wanted to set that expectation, right? And then I say that too, so that way they know if they need to move money around. Okay, this is a big reason why I want to bring this up on day one. That if they need to transfer money from their savings over to here or their home equity line of credit or whatever, you got 5 days. Okay. On Friday, we're going to settle up on payment. Okay. So set that expectation on day one. The other reason I want to set this expectation that we're going to do a walkthrough at the end, outside of the money and the payment, just set that expectation, is I want them to know that nothing is done in the meantime. Okay. How many times, and sometimes if we don't kick off the project well, this becomes even more difficult. You're going to always have that, again, 1% of homeowners, people are people. But we want them to know that when they see something that doesn't look right to them, I don't need them creating a list of 17 things that we need to address every morning when we get there from the day before, when in reality, we're not done with it. Okay. I'll talk more here in a minute on kind of how we, things that can help with the final walkthrough and maybe handle that a little bit throughout. But I just want them to know we will do a walkthrough when everything is done. And sometimes I'll even say that, we'll do a walkthrough on Friday when everything's done. We'll set up on payment, all that good stuff. But just know in the meantime that, if you notice little things, if you feel like something needs another coat, feel free to mention it to us. But there's a good chance like we're already aware of it. And that, we'll address it, right? Sometimes we notice something once we've completed a room, we're already working in another color, we will make time to go back and take care of that. We just may not do it right away. We're going to do it when it makes sense in the flow of the project, right? So I just want to tell them that because there's nothing that puts the homeowner and you and your crew on the defensive more than showing up every day and they have a list of like 10 things they noticed from yesterday, and all 10 things or 9 of the 10 things, like, we know we're not done with. Okay. So that will start to cause friction on a project because your crew gets annoyed, your PM gets annoyed, you as the owner get annoyed, right? That you're like, yes, just let us do our job, right? The homeowner's annoyed, and now they're like, oh, did these people know what they're doing? And maybe, after day one, when you're like, hey, yeah, like, we know we only put one coat on this room. Like, maybe we forgot to tell you yesterday before we left. Like, we were well aware, like, everything you mentioned is already on our to-do list, for today or tomorrow, whatever, right? Maybe they'll be like, oh, okay, they got this, right? Or maybe they're going to be like, I don't know that I really believe him. They're just telling me what I want to hear, and now they're just going to look over your shoulder the rest of the project. Okay. So again, expectation set, own these things ahead of time, be proactive with them. It makes it easier when you're in the middle of the project. Okay. So let's fast forward. End of day one or sometime day one, we're setting that expectation. Middle of this could be a whole nother episode. I wasn't planning on doing one. I might decide to, just about, in the middle of the production, but I want to just fast forward towards the end. Okay. Step 2 in the job closeout SOP is 24 hours before the project is finished. So in this example, let's say we're on track to wrap up Friday, Thursday afternoon. We're going to start having the conversation about what's going on Friday. Okay. So a couple things. So 24 hours before, end of the day, Thursday, or just sometime Thursday when I have that conversation with the homeowner, I'm going to relay a few things. Number one, are they going to be home? Okay. This now gives us time to start problem solving how we're going to do a walkthrough, how we're going to collect payment if they're not going to be around. Okay. If they're leaving on a Friday, and I truthfully try to get to this Monday, right? Again, when I say that Monday, hey, we're going to finish up Friday. Do you think you'll be around Friday? Like, I'll try to kind of even set this expectation before. If I haven't, again, they may be like, hey, we're going to be out of town Friday. Okay, cool. Let's strategize through some stuff here throughout the week, which is, again, why I like bringing that up on Monday. At least just, hey, we're going to finish up Friday. We'll do a walkthrough, etc. They usually then will say that. But if nothing else, 24 hours before, are you going to be around tomorrow? Okay. If they're not going to be, okay, if you guys can't figure out a solution to make this work, here's a couple things I would say. Number one, get creative. Do a walkthrough, that morning or at lunchtime with everything that's done. Okay. If they're leaving at 1:00 on Friday to go out of town for the weekend, you're going to be there at 4:00. They're fine with you being there, wrapping up, close up the garage, set the alarm, whatever. Hey, we want to do a walkthrough with you before you guys leave at lunchtime, just to catch, as much as we possibly can. Again, sometimes I'll even do a walkthrough on Thursday with them just to kind of start catching some of that. Okay. The other thing that I think is very reasonable to ask for, and again, I usually don't have problems with this, never did. A lot of our clients don't still. In this case, I would maybe ask, if they feel comfortable going ahead and leaving payment for us, or, getting that paid before they leave. If they are good with getting paid in full, you guys are able to do a walkthrough, everything looks good, they're happy, they kind of just assume that last, 5 to 10% of the job's going to go well Friday afternoon. Hey, do you mind going ahead and just, leaving a check for us, or getting online and pay, so that way we're settled up and we can take care of what we need to. And if there's anything you notice when you get back, like, let us know. We're happy to come back and do some touch-ups, right? If they don't feel comfortable with that, hey, listen, no problem, I understand. Would you maybe be comfortable at least doing a payment for everything minus 5% or 10% of the cost of the job, if they don't feel comfortable with it? Usually at that point, again, if they've got their eyes on it, they're happy with things, you guys have kind of done that walkthrough on 90% of the project, usually they'll at least do that. And then you're chasing $500 for a final payment whenever they get home, and not like floating $10K maybe, or whatever the size of the project is, right? So if they're not going to be around, get creative, figure out how to do a walkthrough, figure out how to get payment, work through that with them. Again, don't push hard about it, but kind of just set a firm expectation, hey, we really need to do that, so that way we can make sure our crew gets paid, our paint bill gets paid, everything else. It is what it is. I don't ever want to push so hard against it, but I also don't want to be so conservative with it that it causes cash flow issues for us, especially if they're going to be gone for a week or something, right? Just the weekends, maybe not a huge deal, but I still don't like chasing checks on Monday. Okay, so 24 hours before we're going to finish, if they're like, yeah, we'll be around, cool, bet, we'll do a walkthrough, and then again, reiterate the payment, right? Sounds great. When we finish up tomorrow, we'll do kind of a final walkthrough with you, and then again, we'll go ahead and settle up on payment. Chris will send over the invoice in the morning, the final invoice, with change orders, or, nothing's changed, whatever. And we'll settle up on that before we leave tomorrow. So, all right, fast forward to that day. Let's assume they're home, everything's good, and on track. One question I get a lot, because I do want to add in who's accountable here, is that 24-hour before notice, again, that should, truthfully, I usually leverage the crew lead for that if they're my in-house team. The crew lead usually handles that conversation with them, problem solves it, relays anything back to the PM or to the owner if there's any problems or what to expect. So that's my thought. Again, if you have sub crews, that should be a PM having that conversation. Again, if you don't have a PM, then it's you as the owner in that. So, all right, 45 minutes before we're finishing up. Okay. And I say 45 minutes, an hour, somewhere in there, right? As you guys are nearing the end, you're in that you're finishing up the final piece of the scope, maybe some touch-ups or something. What's going to happen is the crew leader or, PM/owner, if need be, gets the customer and does the walkthrough. Okay. We walk through the whole project. It's a great time to just take notes on anything that they notice. Again, typically at this point, they're pretty happy and you've got a good vibe on how this is going to go. And just make notes, take care of anything. Okay. When I get to the end of it, what I always said was, all right, we'll get these touch-ups taken care of. We're going to clean up. We're going to pack up. We're going to do all that. Okay. While we're doing that, Chris sent over the final invoice this morning. You can give us a check. You can go ahead and pay online. There's a button when you open that invoice to do so. It doesn't matter to me. And I'll come let you know when we're finished up and heading out. Okay. This is also the time that I give them the Google review postcard. Okay. And I would go through our advocate discount with them. Refer back to episode 26 this season where I talk about book a job from a job in there if you want to know more about that. But this is when we would handle that. Hey, Kristen, over the invoice, go ahead and take care of that. While we're doing this, if you wouldn't mind leaving us a Google review, here's a postcard that goes straight to our Google My Business profile. This is how people help find us online and make a decision to reach out to work with us. So I'd really appreciate that. And then again, if I'm doing that advocate discount, which I always did, but if you're doing that, this would be the time to just, the last thing as we run through this, blah, blah, blah. Again, refer back to episode 26 for some more details on what that entailed. So here's one thing I want you to know. Okay. I loved doing mini walkthroughs as areas got 100% finished throughout the project. Okay. So I mentioned earlier, how do we maybe make this easier? How do we put them at bay to know when something's done, when it's not? And again, interior is a really easy example here on this one. You can still do this with exteriors too. But interiors is a really easy example. You guys are working, top to bottom, inside out, whatever. As areas and rooms got finished, I would let them know that. Typically, you're going to communicate this just so they can put stuff back together anyways, especially if you're doing like all the bedrooms and stuff. You're kind of going through this piece by piece to make their life easy. But I love doing kind of those walkthroughs. That way they could put the room back together. It was done. And then like we could kind of just move on from it, right? And so when I did that, maybe after Monday, Tuesday, we've got the master suite done. We've got 2 bedrooms done. We got the hallway done, and I'm just like, hey, like all this is done. Like, can we just do, again, crew lead, PM or owner, at the end of that day, like, hey, could we just do a quick walkthrough just to kind of take a look at everything, make sure you're happy with it, and we can kind of check the box on this and, as we continue working on. That way, if there are some issues, they can knock them out that morning. We're not holding the homeowner up for putting their house back together. But really what I liked about that is it kind of just compartmentalized, like, hey, this is done. And if every day you're like kind of doing a quick walkthrough on the things that are done, by the time you get to Friday, one, you already know they're pretty happy with everything, or if they're being really extremely picky. So the sooner you can do those walkthroughs, the better you get a vibe on the homeowner. 2, it just makes that end of the day walkthrough really easy, right? If you've kind of done a walkthrough every day and we've walked through 80% of the project, but you don't have a whole lot to worry about throwing you off on Friday, right? And again, then if they aren't home, they feel pretty good about doing this because there's been some structure in place. So, all right, one belief buster. My coach Dan Martell always says that on our calls, so I'm going to start stealing that line. But one belief buster that I got to talk about, okay? If you don't like the idea, because they talk about crew collecting a check, or they can pay online, either way. If you don't like the idea of your crew leader collecting the check, we probably have some other issues we should talk about, if I'm being honest. Okay. Transparency is key. Trust is important. A lot of people are like, well, I don't want my painters to see how much we're charging for this job. And like, I understand the logic behind it, but like, I think it's a limiting belief for the most part. Okay. You don't maybe have to disclose with everybody how much, money you made on a job, because they may not understand what overhead, like everything else. Like I get, like maybe we're not just like, hey, here's how much money we're making on this. Okay. But like, if you're afraid of a crew leader seeing a check that's for $10K when there was 3 painters there for an entire week, like maybe they shouldn't be a crew leader. I guess maybe that's kind of where I'm going with this, right? Like if there's really some trust issues here, or we're afraid that they're going to see this and like want to go start their own painting company, like I don't love that mentality. I think it just is what it is, and we should be transparent with things, again, even if that's to a degree. So I get a lot of pushback on that. If you really hate it, I mean, I'm going to respect that and figure out how to implement some stuff into your process to where it doesn't hold things up still. But for me personally, like I never had a problem with any of my employees ever seeing like numbers. With our team here, like I run through our monthly numbers. Like here's our P&L for the month. Like here's how our business is. Here's the health. Here's the goals we have. Because it affects all of us, right? Like the better we can do, the more we can talk about bonus structure and like all this stuff, right? And so I'm a big believer in transparency. So again, maybe a little different in our model now compared to painters, but still, even at then, I was like, Trent, collect the check. Like I don't care, right? Like I don't care that you're going to see that we charge a customer $8,000 for this job. Like it's not a big deal. And it's one of those things that it's probably not a big deal if you don't make it a big deal, right? But if you make it weird, then it's going to get weird. So just a thought. Here's the 3 things that this impacts so much and why I'm a big believer in having this dialed in. Number 1, your mental bandwidth. There is nothing worse than having 5 projects open, floating out there because we need to get some touch-ups done, because the homeowner's out of town, because we're waiting on payment, and again, a big chunk of it, right? There's nothing that will start to suck your mental bandwidth and create anxiety in your life than just having a bunch of open-ended things. And especially if some of them we can't then fix quickly because the homeowner's gone for a week, that makes it really hard. Okay. Number 2, the big one, your cash flow. If I had $1 for every time we've gotten started working with a painting contractor, or we've just dove into their numbers in an analysis call, and we realize how much money they have in receivables, and we realize that 90% of those jobs are like done, it blows my mind, and I immediately go to exactly this topic. Okay. Your cash flow is dependent upon jobs getting done and money getting in the bank as quickly as possible, right? So again, stress, we don't want our cash flow to be impacted. If your closeout process is dialed in, your cash flow can't be a problem, right? And I mean day-to-day cash flow. But again, without it, too lack of a structure, no expectation, it wouldn't be abnormal for $1 million painting business to have $75,000 in receivables at any given time. And I don't know about you, but I don't really want to float $75,000 because I have a crappy process in place, or probably more likely a non-existent one. Got a little spicy, not mad about it. Number 3, impact. I know that this will wreck your schedule. I'm trying to figure out how severe I wanted to make that. Okay. I know this will wreck your schedule because if you don't have this process dialed in, you're going to have to go back and be doing a lot more touch-ups. You're going to be doing all these things. And it's just going to wreck your schedule. Okay. It's really hard to hit your monthly production goals when, every week you're sending one painter for a half a day to, 3 different jobs from last week to fix and correct stuff. So again, trust me, get some processes, get some structure built into this, build a habit, a rhythm, a routine, whatever you want to call it, for whoever's leading that job, whether it's the crew leader, whether it's a PM, whether it's you as the owner. Take accountability. Your job is to own the closeout the same way it was to own the startup SOP. And if you can do that, your mental health is going to be better. Your cash flow is going to be better. And your schedule is going to be less strained, which means you will produce more jobs each month and that will continue to help your mental health and your cash flow. Thanks for plugging into this week's episode. I hope you're able to take a few nuggets away from it to implement into your business. Remember, knowledge without implementation is useless. If you're curious about what we do and how we help painting contractors all over North America, schedule a free business analysis meeting with us at www.elitebusinessadvisors.com. Our entire team of advisors have ran and managed painting companies just like myself and are here to help support you on your journey. We have packages available for contractors at every stage of business, from flying solo and just starting out, all the way to multi-million-dollar businesses. And lastly, if you loved this episode, please leave us a rating and a review. It helps others on the platform find our podcast, and it could be the best blessing that's ever happened to them thanks to you. Thanks for plugging in, and we'll see you back for next week's episode.